And welcome back to the Podcaster Nation, everybody. We have a very special treat for you today. I'm going to tell you about it in just one second. This is the podcast that is done by podcasters. It's for podcasters, and it's about podcasters. And my guest today is a podcaster. Go figure. Folks, this is the place where we all come together. This is the place where we help each other out, and we all work as one. The whole is greater than the sum of the parts. That's why we do what we do. This is a place where the rising tide raises all boats, and we are about to raise some boats today and go sailing. It's going to be awesome. I got a great guest with me today. I love talking to this guy. He's incredibly personable, and man, when you get him going, he can talk. so, so strap yourselves in and just get ready. All right. Please welcome to the show the host of the Devine Time podcast, Donli Daniels. Or Donli Devine? How you doing?
Donli Devine. I
All
am
right.
good. I live.
That's a great place to start, man.
Yes, 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 it
I love it.
is.
All right. Listen, I appreciate you coming on today. Your podcast,
Hmm.
Divine Time. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Tell everybody, just to start with, what is Divine Time? What's it about? What can they expect if they look you up and they want to hear what you have to say?
So, divine time, I came to this realization that everything happens in divine time. We all are going through things in life. We all have life lessons. Those life lessons the consequences to those lessons will become greater the longer that you go without learning that lesson. The universe will keep on throwing that lesson at you hoping that you grasp what the lesson is and you change what it is that you're doing. You learn from it. So, with it on my podcast, I share a lot of life lessons while at the same time sharing my spiritual growth, things that I have gone through in life and how it has molded me into the individual that I am. I understand that I have made mistakes in the past. I learned from those mistakes, and I am now taking all the knowledge that I've learned from those mistakes and sharing with others, hoping that they learn from those mistakes that I made so they don't have to make the same ones. I'm passing the knowledge that I've learned while at the same time bringing on other guests via my Saturday panels and having them share their knowledge. So ultimately, the way that I the way that I see the world and the way that I want the world to be is through love. And the way that we can do that is through a community of love and learning. So that way we all are constantly growing.
Wow. I love that. That sounds fantastic. I would tune in right now. So, all right. Thank you for that explanation. Now you've got, I know a little bit about you. We've talked a couple
Hmm.
times in the past, and
Yes, sir.
you've been through some things that have kind of
Oof.
led you to this point. I mean, like you said
Yeah.
a few minutes before we started, you're a Marine, so you've been there.
Hurrah.
You've seen a lot. You've had a lot happen to you, and you've done a lot, and
Mhm.
yet here you stand. So when you start off the conversation today saying, I live. I know that that has some extra meaning for you. That's not flippant. I mean, that's really how you
Yes.
feel. Give us an idea of, who is Donley? What brought you to this spot, man?
So my government name is Irely Daniels. Go ahead. You can try and steal my identity. That's not going to do nothing for you. Just letting you know. With it, I go by Donley because it's a mix of my middle and last name. I share the same name as my father. He was absent throughout my life. Growing up, my mother would call my name anytime I'm in trouble. Anybody who is of a complexion of me, they know when you in trouble, you hear your whole name. So with that, I would hear Irely, the doom. It's like, yo, what did I do? But the face that my mom would have on was kind of like a look of disgust. So then eventually, when I got older, I understood like, okay, that's not normal. Like, why are you looking at me like that? So I asked her, and long story short, on there, I'm a junior. I became a junior because my father told my mother that I was going to be his first boy. Growing up later on, and I guess my mom found out before I did, my father has a son already. And I don't know exactly what happened between my mom and my dad, but she used to look at me a type of way. And then I was like, well, why don't you just call me something else then if it bothers you, it triggers you so much? And she was like, what do you want to be called? I was like, call me Shade. And she was like, nah, forget that. No, we ain't doing that. I was like, "Oh, come on. Like,
It was a great idea, though. Yeah.
yeah, I thought it was a good name. So then we end up mixing my middle name, my last name, and therefore how I got Donley.
Okay.
So that's Donley there. But when I was younger, I dealt with holding my best friend as he died in my arms from a drive-by shooting when we were walking back from elementary school. Um, I spoke. I have a segment on my podcast called Speak Your Truth, where I invite individuals to come on and speak about things that they have gone through in life that are either traumatic or very that changed their life, whether it's near death experiences, it is narcissistic abuse, and my goal is to inform and empower other people to use their voice, let them know that you are not a victim, you are a survivor, change your mentality. Also let them know that there's light at the end of the tunnel. Somebody else has gone through the things that you have gone through, also providing validation. So don't stop doing what you're doing. You might need to change it so that way you can make it out. And then at the same time, let others know how you made it out so we can save each other. I served 8 years in the Marine Corps. I found out that I was married at one point, and at the time that I got diagnosed with PTSD and depression, I also found out my wife was cheating by getting called into BAS, which is the battalion aid station. And they told me that I popped on a piss test. I was like, I don't do drugs. Like, how the hell that happened? They're like, you got the clap. I was like, what the fuck is the clap? And then they explained to me what chlamydia is, aka clap. And I was like, the only person I've been sleeping with is. But at that time, everybody flocked away from me because if you're going through a divorce or announce a divorce, everybody runs to the woman because they imagine that the guy did something, right? But I did not say anything about what had happened, so I just got diagnosed with PTSD and depression, and then now I have everybody completely isolate me. So now I'm left to deal with these things alone. I did 2 tours in Afghanistan to come back, deal with this type of stuff, and then have everybody completely desert me. And I'm trying to
Wow.
hold it together. At that time, as I'm trying to hold together, I started drinking heavily to try and deal with my pain. It led to a DUI that got dropped out in town, but the Marine Corps still decided to charge me prematurely. Um, then with that, music is my remedy. I ended up going to a rave. It was called Freak Night. It was up in Washington. Went to a rave, and the day that the rave was set, the CEO comes down and says, "Hey, nobody go to this." I went anyway. So
Okay.
I disobeyed a direct order from a commissioned officer. I accept that. But then with it, it was like they wanted to parade that they the way that they put me up in front of everybody and tried to do all that, it just added on to everything else I was going on to. And I was like, look, my whole career, I was a meritorious Marine. Like, just go ahead and let me out early. I got like 7 months left before I actually EAS, end of active service. I was
Yeah.
like, just go ahead and put me out. And me and the first sergeant got into it to where he pretty much was prolonging it to where I didn't know when I was getting out. So it was hard for me to get a job afterwards because I couldn't tell them when I was getting out. So it made things
Nice.
very difficult.
Yeah.
Then continuing forward, I was in the states where my wife's brother was. I had actually went to that state after I reenlisted, so she'd be closer to family because I met her in high school when I was in Hawaii. And when she came to California, they sent me right back to Afghanistan. She didn't know anybody, nothing like that. She spent my whole second tour completely alone. So I wanted her to be by somebody. Just so happened that she definitely got close to somebody. So with that, oh, by the way, I have a dark sense of humor. So the things that
I'm
you
sorry,
may hear
man.
me giggle and laugh about, that's just my way of coping.
Okay. Gotcha.
I have also realized that with me being an empath, I learned this later on in life. I tend to draw narcissistic individuals towards me. I did not know what a narcissist was until the last situation that me and my current wife have been through. We're polyamorous, which I don't claim the title. We don't claim the title anymore due to the fact that in that community, there's a lot of narcissistic individuals, predators, or liars. Ultimately, a lot of people who are just seeking
Sure. I gotcha.
physical gratification.
Hmm.
And that's not what either one of us are about. We're here about literally love, building relationships. And when I say relationships, it's not always a physical thing. Majority of the time, it's not a physical thing. But when you hear relationship, people automatically assume in this day and age that it's something physical. I had a situation where we end up dating another couple. The man is in the military, he's in the army, and he was going for chief warrant officer. At the time, he was just staff sergeant. And his wife, long story short, there, the wife ended up drugging me and raping me on her period. And the husband tried to emotionally manipulate my wife to have coitus with him multiple times. And she said no physically twice. And then on the third time, or said no verbally twice. And then on the third time, physically by hitting him and saying no. And then he tried to be like, oh, this is gonna be my last night here and whatever, whoop de woo. So then with that, we end up taking it to CID based off of some other individuals who I know who are in the military, and they were like, just take it to CID. We did that. They lied completely to get it dropped, which we didn't find out later on until they decided to try and take me to court and lie and say I pulled a weapon on them and try and make it seem like I was always angry and all this stuff and I was pursuing them and forced them into all of this. And that's when I learned about projection. All the things that they were saying I did is the things that they did, except for drawing a weapon. There was no weapons involved. However, I had a security company and private investigations business. So them trying to say I did this was trying to make me a felon to where I would lose my licenses and ultimately lose my business and destroy my life. If I became a felon, I would have lost everything.
Yeah,
So they were
for
trying to
sure.
destroy my life because I spoke the truth. Now, during that time, I had informed a couple people of what had happened. Those people who I thought were my friends were pretty much telling me, forget about it, don't worry about it, stop talking about it. Like, why is it still bothering you? They didn't know everything that was going on. I was telling them what happened to me. I wasn't telling them everything that these people were doing. So, long story short, on that, because they ended up taking me to civil court, I exposed everything. I exposed how they have tried to manipulate other families in Washington because those other families came forward and spoke about what happened when they found out that I was in court. I found out that they had sexually molested three other families, two in other states, one in Texas, one in Hawaii. I also found out that that's when I found out that the husband, he had denied a polygraph when he was under investigation, which I wish they did because it would have cleared everything up. That's when I found out that they lied and said they sat in on one of my mental health sessions and I was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, dissociative identity disorder, and depression. I had to open my medical records so the court can see I'm only diagnosed with depression and PTSD. So all that was a lie. Then they lied and said that they talked to my wife, and my wife said none of that ever happened. My wife wrote a 12-page letter talking about everything that happened. Then with it, there was other individuals who came forward because they got lied on when I was telling them like, yo, so during a CID case, nobody would answer the phone or nobody would talk to the CID people. But then when the civil case came, all these people were getting lied on who were my friends. They came forward and spoke about what happens with them, what these people tried to do with them or what happened with them. They That's how I found out they had sexually molested three other families. The husband had inappropriately touched my wife's mother twice.
Oh my gosh. All right. So,
Yes.
I mean, this just kind of
So
keeps getting worse here.
it was crazy. So then that's when I had realized I was like, dang, it almost tore my family apart. Me and my wife were still together, but it almost ran my wife's mother away. She was staying with us at the time. And it led to a lot of issues and caused me to really dive into myself because I was like, you know what? If I'm dealing with these types of people, what is it about me that's attracting them? I'm like, the common denominator is me. So what am I doing that's attracting these people? And I started looking into because the way that I found out the term narcissist was she tried saying I was a narcissist. And I was like, how am I a narcissist? What the fuck is a narcissist? I looked into it. I was like, that's everything you were doing. And via the court case, I see why how she was trying to portray me as this bad person. She was highlighting, literally taking a highlighter and highlighting the things that she wanted the judge and lawyers to see. Now, with it, I provided everything, which showed what she was saying to me. And then it showed that I was reacting to what she was saying, how she was trying to put me down and saying, calling me names and saying all these
Right.
different things. So therefore, it showed the full truth instead of her showing what she wanted them to see. That's ultimately what ended up causing me to win. And besides the fact that everybody saw that everything they were doing was lies, because every time I showed evidence, they changed their stories.
So in the end, you won this thing.
Yes, I won it, but ultimately I wanted to put the reverse the charge and put it on them. The reason why we didn't, what the reason why the judge didn't is because the judge called them out on their bullshit. The judge decided to close the case, and he did not put the restraining order on them because they were saying that I was still doing things to them and all this stuff. My attorney and the judge knew I was already out of the state.
Okay.
I've been out of the state for like 2 months at this time. And the judge and my attorney knew. And they're saying that I'm like popping up at their house and yelling and all that stuff and doing all these other things. And the judge finally was like, look, shut the fuck up. No, that's not happening. Like the judge was like, look, you have been contradicting everything you've been saying. And then they end up having a meltdown and completely screaming and yelling and crying. This is on Zoom. And I still have all the evidence. They had got one of my friends, they told my friend a bunch of things that I was doing. My friend ended up writing that stuff down into his little into his statement. And I was just like, dude, they completely played you, which is crazy because she knew that you had a crush on her. And before you moved to New York, I asked her, I was like, you knew he liked you. Like, how come you didn't give him a chance? She said, because he's easily manipulated. I didn't
All
think
right.
anything of that. Yeah, it's crazy. But I mean, I had to cut it off with her in May and I was like, look, if you keep contacting me and blowing me up, I was like, that's harassment. And then later on, it was in October when I found out when my wife's mom was a little inebriated and told us what the husband had did. And that's when I was like, yo, what the fuck? That caused my wife to finally be like, nah, fuck that shit. And I was like, cool. So we went to CID. But they came after me because I was constantly getting upset based off things that they were doing. But the issue is I did not know at the time that my wife's mother was molested as a child. I knew about my wife being molested when she was younger. I didn't know about my wife's mom. So when my wife's mom spazzed out on me when I was talking about it, or the times when things were going crazy, and I was like, I needed someone throughout the time that we were in a relationship with them, I was the one constantly fighting and defending them, but they would always be silent, causing them
Okay.
to sit here and say that's not really what's happening. If there was an issue, they would say something.
Well,
So I was getting gaslit. It was
yeah,
crazy.
here, let's hold off on that part only
Yes, sir.
because you don't want to be talking about somebody else's, past type of thing. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah,
So let's just kind of keep it, let's stay on our lane with just, things that have happened to you. And I
yeah.
totally get it.
So
When I said that you've been through it, you really have been through it.
I have. So
Yeah.
I'm going
I
forward.
hear you. Now,
I
how does all this, and let me just say, I really am
Mhm.
sorry for your loss with your friend. Having somebody, pass away in your arms like that is devastating. But all this stuff here, I mean, I think we can kind of see how all these different things have kind of shaped you and you've had different realizations along the way.
Yes.
How does all this stuff lead to you wanting to, share this pain, share your new revelations, do it through a podcast?
I see looking into the world of where we are right now. There's a lot of individuals who are retaliating based off of things that they have gone through. There's a lot there are a lot of people who are repeating the same actions that was done against them, seeking revenge, and it's causing a cycle. There are people ultimately what I want to do is I want to stop that cycle. In order for the world to be a better place, and my wife gets on me all the time because it's my favorite quote from Michael Jackson. If you want to make the world a better place, you must first look in the mirror and be that change. So, with that, through everything that I've been through and seeing how we have so much killing, seeing how we have so much manipulation, seeing how we have so much negative things happening in the world, for me to create a platform to allow other individuals who have gone through struggles, gone through things, to come forward and use their voice and speak about what they've gone through and how they have changed, how they have made an impact, and how others can make an impact. I feel that is how we can get the world to move in a state of love, for people to learn from others' mistakes. Because why? Back in the day, We had our grandparents, and we would learn from our grandparents the things that they would say. Just like even before their time, there were stories like with Native Americans and everything. We would pass stories down, and you would learn from the stories.
Yeah.
And with the podcast, it's the same thing. We're passing on those stories. It might not resonate with you right then and there. And the things that you hear, you're going to tell somebody else. So that right there, you're informing somebody else, which that might be something that they need. And they might be able to relate to that. So now you're validating somebody else's story. One thing we don't have these days is validation.
Mm.
More people are going to tell you, forget about it. Don't think about it. Don't worry about it. What happened to the Vietnam veterans when they came back? Watching their best friends get blown up, or either having to hold their friends as they died in their arms, or either losing people that they were close to. The government and people around them said, don't think about it. That
Right.
caused these people to end their lives. There was no compassion, there was no empathy. I want to provide a platform that allows people to have that validation, to know that you are not alone. What happened, it did happen. You're not the only one that things like this have happened to. However, there is things that you can do. You can speak up, use your voice, because staying quiet, you're enabling these habits, these behaviors to keep on going. You're enabling people to keep acting that way. If you want to make the world a better place, you must first look in the mirror and be that change. And I'm sure that from me thinking in that victim mentality at once upon a time, before I decided to be like, you know what, I survived that. How can I help others survive this? How can I help others change their mindset and mentality? How can I help others look at this situation and be like, you know what? I forgive myself for allowing me to go through this so long. Forgiveness is not about forgiving the other person, but forgiving yourself in the actions that happened. Forgiving yourself for dealing with what you have gone through and learning from it. Because if you sit here angry all the time or feeling a type of way, what does that do for the person who did whatever they did to you? Not a damn thing. Chances are they're not thinking about you, but you're killing yourself thinking about it. What would hurt them the most is showing them, you know what? I am better than this. You have no control over me. And that's for anything, any stressful situation. You can look at it that way.
Right. Love it. And that's what you try and do through the podcast by
That
talking to
is
other
what I
folks who have
am
been through
doing.
this. Okay.
Words have meaning. I'm not trying anything. It's what I am doing. Thank you, Brother Ralph.
Okay. So that's what you're
Sorry.
doing through your podcast. I
Yes, sir.
understand. I got you. Got you. Um, on your podcast, can you give me an example for those who have not listened to any of your stuff yet?
Hmm.
Just an example of the types of folks you have on, not in detail, but just, give them an idea in case someone out here is thinking, man, I've got a story. Maybe I want to call this guy up and be on his podcast.
Okay. I'll give a bunch of examples. First of all, I gotta say I have my kids on because we all learn through children. Children have a lot of things that they can teach all of us. Children are their true, genuine self. As time goes on, we grow into societal norms. We are groomed into how the world is supposed to be, how we are supposed to act, how we're supposed to respond, how we're supposed to move. Children are truly happy because they are themselves. We all have our inner child inside of us wanting to do something, but at the same time, we look around at the people around us and we're like, would they approve? We're constantly looking for approval. We want to fit in. And that's why I bring my children on to ask them questions and see their point of view in their eyes. I also have spiritual leaders on. I have medical professionals. I have people who have suffered from different type of mental illnesses. I have people who suffer from physical illnesses. I've had individuals who are blind, people who are deaf. That one was interesting. Because
On
I
a
mean, it was
podcast, I'll
like,
bet. Yeah.
yeah, that one was interesting. Like, I would type and then with it, or either I would speak if they had like a translator on who would sit there and sign for them. Like, it's pretty dope. Like the ways that you can be intuitive to get the message across. Um, I've, like I said, spiritual leaders. I have individuals who are far in their spiritual journey. I've had mediums, psychics, bone readers. I have had mental health professionals. I have had medical professionals. And these are individuals who have dealt with death, have talked to people on the other side. These are people who are going through spiritual awakenings. These are people who are have were born with disabilities or either became disabled themselves. So I mean, it's all walks of life. And I mean, you get to really see how no matter how bad you think your life is, there's someone who might have it worse. So if
Sure.
we all were to take our problems and put them on the table, you might just grab your problem back. You know?
I like
So
that. Now you're a self-described empath.
yes.
How does that impact what you do and
Oh,
through the course of the podcast?
this is one of the things that I'm going to be talking about a lot in season 5 because growing up, I would see shadows, I would be feeling things. And when I would, so first of all, my mom is an ordained minister and also a deaconess. So growing up, and I'm like, there was something over there in the corner. Oh, those are demons. Pray about it. The fudge. Mom, like, you don't see that? What see what? Nah, you better pray about that. That's demons. There was one time my mom came in and threw bleach on me and said it was holy water. And when I tell you it got in my eye and I was freaking the fuck out, I was like, oh shit. Excuse my language. I was like, am I demon? I was like, am I possessed? Like what the world? Yeah, it was crazy one day. Ma, I love you.
All
I love
right.
you. I love you. I love you. But the way that I feel, I never really could explain it because growing up, when I was saying like, oh, my knee is hurting or my arm is hurting or I have a massive headache and you go to the doctor and doctor's like everything's fine. I don't know what's wrong with them. Now it seems like you're a liar. Me and my wife, she is an empath as well. She grew up in a spiritual household, spiritual and religious. They had an even balance between it. So she was taught what these things were. Dealing with living with her, when we go out, there's times where I'll feel something and I'll be like, babe. She's like, what? I'm like, I'm feeling something. Is it you? She's like, oh, and she'll like be like left leg or right arm. Does it feel like this? And I'm like, yeah. She's like, it's not me, but I feel it too. So I really got to understand how to differentiate what I'm feeling and when I can tell when it's me or somebody else. Let me give you an example. I want you to go ahead and pinch your arm real quick. Pinch your arm. Now let go. You see how you stop pinching yourself, but you still feel it?
Sure.
Okay. So when you were pinching it, you could feel the pressure. You can actually feel it. When you stopped, you feel a faint resemblance of what just happened.
Right.
That faint resemblance is the feeling that it would be when I'm feeling somebody else. But the when you're pinching yourself, that's how I can tell it's me because I can feel that pressure or I can feel that pressure and at the same time be able to tell like okay cool this is me feeling me when it's kind of like a ghost feeling that's when I'm like okay this is somebody else that I'm feeling when my wife was pregnant I collapsed on the stairs with a back spasm and I was like yo what the hell I told my wife she was about to go into labor based off of the things that I felt I have fell on the floor once before and later on found out that my sister had collapsed and they took her to the hospital and she got diagnosed with MS. I was on the other side of the country.
Wow.
The thing that sucks with me being an empath is I have to be careful of who I link with. What I mean by that is the people that I get close to. So if I get close with someone and I build a strong enough bond, there's times where I'll just be walking and they'll pop into my head, and I've learned to call them. And when I call them, they'll either be like, "I was just thinking about you," or they'll answer the phone. I'm like, "What did you do?" Or I'll be like, "Hey, is everything all right?" And they'll be like, "Yeah, I'm good," but you can hear it in their voice, and I'm like, "What's going on?" And then they just break down on what's happening, and I'm just like, "Oh my gosh!" Like I had to learn to put barriers up to keep myself spiritually at a distance from some people because you have some people who are always woe is me and will sit there and drain you.
Wow. So you have some degree of control over this.
Yes, it took years. It took years after realizing what it was because I thought that I was just crazy and was always in pain, and I didn't know what was going on because when I would get the pain looked at, they're like, everything's fine. I'm not finding anything that's wrong. I'm not finding nothing wrong with you when you're saying this and this. I'm like, well, I know what the fudge I'm feeling, you know?
Right.
So I don't understand. Like, come on. I mean, I had got shoulder surgery and on my rotator cuff, I got rotator cuff surgery. And when I got done with the rotator cuff surgery, the doctor told me, he was like, yeah, it was bad. He was like, in all honesty, he was like, he's like, don't take this the wrong way. He's like, but he's like, I haven't seen, he was like, he's like, it wasn't as bad as I thought. He was like, but at the same time, I haven't seen something quite like that before. And I was like, am I an alien? Like, what? I don't get it. But then he explained to me, he was like, just this has nothing to do with the empath, but the way that my body is, I guess I produce more muscle. So I'm freakishly strong for no reason.
Okay.
And with
Thanks for
that,
that insider info right there.
with that, there was tissue in places. There was more of a mass of tissue in places that he wasn't expecting. And what it made me think was, okay, cool. I wonder if people who are empaths have a different buildup because I know, like with my wife, we have a higher pain tolerance, and my wife has had a car fall on her arm. She can show you the scars, and she should have nerve damage. She still gets like the tingling through it. When that happened, I was at work. My arm started hurting,
Okay.
and
So
I
you
didn't.
guys are connected to each other clearly.
Yeah, obviously. I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, we got two kids together. I hope so.
Right.
But there's another lady who she's still back out on West, and there was one time where all of a sudden my head started hurting. I was like, what the heck is going on? And her name popped into my head. And I was like, okay, cool. I ignored it. And I'm walking, and then all of a sudden it was like a sudden migraine, just like almost like kind of like had me a little woozy. I was like, what the world? Her name popped into my head again. So I was like, man, bump this stuff. Yo, Gigi, how you doing? And she's like, I'm at the hospital. I was like, what? Can't say that, but I was like, yo, why you at the hospital? She had got into a physical altercation with her boyfriend. And with that, there were multiple blows to her head.
Okay.
And I was feeling them.
So you were feeling it. I got you. I get
Um,
the broad strokes of what you're dealing with here. So,
yeah, and I'm just like, so, and at one point, it got to a point where I was like, I was experimenting with I was doing some hypothesis of wondering how I could loosen this. And one thing that I learned was if I'm drinking, I don't feel things. But that also can turn into something that can also turn into an addiction. And I
okay.
also learned that addiction runs in my family, so I had to put that down. So, but
Gotcha.
other than that, I had to learn how to put these barriers up and keep myself at a distance. And the way that I learned to do that was working customer service jobs, being around people often.
Okay.
And that was very tiring, but I learned to imagine that there is a white line on my skin. And then I would, over time, over like the course of 3 years, I imagined that white line, that barrier, being further and further away from my skin, protecting myself from what I was feeling.
Interesting. All right.
It's
So
it's crazy. I
it's
mean,
something
when
that
you
you have to
say it
deal with
out
all the
loud,
time.
yeah,
Yeah.
when you say it out loud, it sounds crazy. And the crazy part is you can't speak about these things out to everybody because it's going to make you sound crazy. And with that, that was one of the things that they tried to use against me in court to make it seem like I was mentally unstable.
Okay.
However, because for example, there was a time where I had got upset about what had happened, and this lady ended up having my journal. And in my journal, I had wrote about how it calms me down when I see family that's dead. And later on, my grandma informed me that those are my ancestors. It's crazy, that spirituality type stuff. But they
Okay.
tried using that in court to make it sound like it calms me down to see my family dead. And I was like, what? So I had to show the whole thing. And I was just like, I don't know if that would help anything, but yeah. But seeing into the going into spirituality and having certain gifts, it's difficult to talk about. You can't talk about these things with everybody. But however, in this day and age, we have reached a point to where it's starting to become normal to where people are talking about things like the afterlife and
Sure.
seeing things that other people may not be able to see, you know?
Right, absolutely. I mean, what you're talking about is not, crazy by any
Thank you.
stretch. So
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
don't take that, from any of my behavior. My wife understands an awful lot of the types
Hmm.
of things that you're talking about. She
Okay.
studied a lot of that and is very well versed, and so a lot of that is rubbed off on me. So, when I hear that someone's an empath, I go, "Well, I know what you're talking about." But I also go, "A lot of people don't, so why don't we
They
tell everybody?"
don't.
So,
And I'm gonna do an
yeah.
episode on that. Empaths and empathy are not the same thing.
So now you're not using that in the podcast in any way, shape, or form and trying to connect with guests or anything. This is just
N-
something that's reserved for people that are close to you that you have a bond with.
yes,
Right.
yes.
Okay.
However, there are some times, like for example, I did an episode yesterday with an individual, and as we were speaking, he he slipped into an emotional state, and I felt it. And I'm not gonna lie, with me feeling it, it caused me to ask a question. Now, mind you, my mom's profession is psychology. I grew up reading her books, the DSM-5 and all that. So with it, I ended up kind of went into like therapist mode and I had to ask him the question. I was like, all right, cool. I was like, so in the situation of when this happened, what was going through your mind at that time? And then that had him stop to think about it. And he was like, that's a good question. So he thought about that. He answered the question and I asked him, what would you say would be the root cause of that feeling? Is this a feeling that you felt before? Just to kind of walk him through. Granted, he didn't know what I was feeling because I never disclosed these things to him, but to have him get more in tune with his emotions. Because when it comes to men, we're supposed to be seen as the strong person. We're not, a lot of people don't imagine that men are not supposed to be able to be in their emotions, not being able to feel. We have to just do. And me doing that, you can tell that it really we really built a rapport off of that moment. So I mean, being an empath, you're able to relate to people on a deeper level. So that's one thing
Excellent.
that I really love about that because you can actually feel what someone's dealing with. And if you understand what you're feeling, it's a lot easier to help them.
That's awesome. So this is what someone can expect if they want to come on your show.
Yeah, and
In
that's the
in
reason why
short.
a lot of people who come on my show, they're like, "Oh my God, like the atmosphere is just so calm. Like I just feel like I've known you for a long time." And in my head, I'm just like, "It's just because I can feel you," but I don't say it out loud. I'm like, yeah. So I mean, the atmosphere of my show is always cool, calm, collective, and positive.
Nice. Nice. All right. So if people want to get on your show, you've
Mhm.
got a link you're going to send to me that I can
Yes.
put into the show notes,
Hmm.
and that takes everybody to your link tree. Go ahead and
Yes,
tell everybody
it's
about that real quick.
with that, it's gonna have all the links where you can find me. It's gonna show the Patreon. It's gonna show the Spotify, to where you can find the podcast. It'll show the YouTube. It's going to show the Kick, the Twitch. It's also going to show where I have my blog, which is Donli at divinetime.blog. That has the blog and the podcast all collective in there. And I also am dropping a short. I have a short story series called Niggy Rama. It's ultimately me telling my stories through life and other things that I'm going through in a comical sense via all my personalities. It's going to be Ira, Donnelly, and Shade, which you know how you have the devil and the angel. So it's going to be equivalent to that. And there's going to be other individuals, which I can't use their real names, but there's going to be other characters that play into it as well. And it's
All
all
right.
going to be comical to get the point across in a way that's going to make you laugh. Now, granted, I'm a Marine. It's going to be gritty at sometimes, and it has a lot of dark humor. That's just my natural humor.
Nice.
But
So you're
it's
building a whole entertainment empire here, not just the podcast.
yes, yes. To sum it up, yes. I
Right.
mean, I am a better writer than I am speaker because when it comes down to speaking, and this is the reason why you probably notice I stop and take a deep breath because things go through my head faster than I can actually say it.
I don't know.
So
You
I have
say them pretty
to,
quick, man.
look, I have gotten into the habit because if I let the accent come out, you're gonna be like, yo, what the fuck? So I've gotten in a habit of being able to try and slow my mind down by repeating it. So if I say if I'm thinking a sentence, I say the sentence again before I go to the next sentence and then say that sentence again. And so that's how I'm have it in my head so that way I can keep on track with it.
Got
Because
it.
if I just talk how I want to talk, it's gonna go fast. And I had a lot of people be like, "You're talking way too fast." I'm like, "No, you just listening slow." So,
Gotcha.
but yes, I
Okay.
can.
Beautiful. 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 All right, Mr. Fast Talker. I got you. We're okay.
Hey, silver tongue devil.
All right. I got to fit this in,
Yes, sir.
just in the interest of time. Just like Arnold always fits in, I'll be back. Okay. I
Get to
always
the
fit in.
chopper.
I, I always fit in my one corny question, and something tells me I'm not going to get a short answer from you, man. Because
I will do my best.
here it goes. In doing your podcast and doing everything that you're doing. Okay, your whether it be your blogging, whether it be your show you're putting out, but all of the
Mhm.
stuff that you're doing in this cause, okay,
Yes.
that you have this mission. What is the thing that you love the most about it, and what is the thing that you just hate is a strong word, but that
I really, really,
you
yeah.
just hate about it?
I'm gonna start with the negative because it's always better to uplift at the end. You might tear somebody down, but then uplift them to make them feel a lot better and also show them that, you know what, you can do better. What I dislike, because hate is a strong word, but like the song says, I really, really, really don't like you. Yeah, I went to the rock road. But what I dislike about this, about doing all of this, is trying to find that there's not enough time in the day. Not enough time in the day.
For sure.
Because I'm like, I have kids, I have a family, and I'm doing all of this by myself. I'm doing the editing by myself. I'm doing the scheduling by myself. I'm doing the recording by myself. I'm creating thumbnails by myself. I'm doing it all myself, answering emails, all of that. And I still need to find time to spend with my two kids who are under the age of 6, with my wife, my dogs, and the parents in law.
That's a
So
lot. Yeah, that's a lot. I know.
finding, I had to really be like, you know what? This is something that I really enjoy going into the likes. I always have loved bringing a smile to people's faces. I've always enjoyed helping people solve problems. And that's one of my things with doing this podcast, having this entertainment thing, as you say. That is the reason why I keep doing it, to make sure that it reaches those who it needs to be reached. Because knowledge is having it. Wisdom is when you're able to pass that on. So when you have that knowledge, you can hold on to it all day long. But if you're not passing it on, how are you passing the wisdom?
Nice.
So even if you are listening to this and it does not resonate with you, but you tell somebody about what you listen to, you're passing that wisdom on because that might be what they need to hear. That might be the thing that keeps them from going home and doing something that they may regret later on or hurting people around them. So listening to the Podcaster Nation or listening to Divine Time or anybody who else who you may get some type of knowledge from, when you receive that and someone's talking and that pops into your head and your amygdala starts flowing and you pass that on to them, giving them that wisdom that you learned, that wisdom that you know of, you could possibly save a life. That
Wow.
is why I do this.
Love it. All right, man. In the interest of time, last question. You ready?
Oh, there's another one? Oh
There's one
gosh.
more. Oh, yeah, I'm not going to let you
Okay.
off the hook that easy. Come on.
God dang it.
You've been doing this for a minute.
Yes, sir.
Okay. You're not brand new to this by any stretch. So you've learned some things. So
Hmm.
to other podcasters, because we do have a lot of podcasters who listen to this, but
Okay.
to other podcasters, what's one piece of advice you want to give? Something you've learned, something you to avoid, something to always do. What's one piece of advice you want to give to podcasters who aren't quite where you are, but would like to be?
Can I give two?
Sure.
Okay. Like I said, I like to do duality, the balance.
All right.
One thing I would recommend not to do is only do what I recommend not doing is only doing it for gratification, some type of physical gratification. Do not do it just for that. Do not do it to try and say, "Oh, I've got this many followers or I make this much a month off of it." Do it because you actually have a passion for it. There's a lot of individuals who come on and are like, okay, this is the new fad, or this is a quick a way that I can have some type of money coming in, but you're just doing it half-ass. No, ideas are circling through other everybody who is in that type of frequency. So if you are not in it for a passion, this is not a hobby of yours, find something else that you actually resonate with. Allow somebody who has this as a passion and as a hobby to take that idea and go with it, because they will actually put their heart and soul into it, and it will be 5 times greater than what it is that you were going to do. So do not waste your effort on something just for gratification.
Nice. Beautiful.
Aw.
I like it. All right. You made me smile. All right, there it is.
Hey.
Okay. All right, man. I thank you for that
Hey.
and for everything. Listen, I I know you've been through it, and I know it's not always easy to share, but thanks for sharing that with everybody and just being so open and honest.
Hey, relax your mind. It's divine time.
There he is. He's got that voice like butter. I mean, you're just out there, man. I love it. So,
Respect.
all right then. Well, hey, the host of the Divine Time podcast, Donli Devine. Thank you for being on, man.
Respect.
All right.
Oh, something I want to start. I want to start going peace, love, and unity. Respect. There we go. That's how I'm gonna end mine. Thank you.
Did you
You
just
just gave
come
me
up
that
with that
idea.
just now?
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome, man. All right. Hey, we're happening right here on our
Blessings.
show. All right. Good
Respect,
deal.
boss.
I love it.
Much love and appreciate it.
Folks, this has been another episode of The Podcaster Nation. Another awesome one with an awesome guy. And I mean it, man. You got a voice like butter. Just beautiful. So keep it up. Keep doing what you're doing. Keep sharing. Folks, this is the place that's for you. That's for us. It's where we come together and we help each other out. This is the podcast. It's about podcasters. It's for podcasters, and it's it features podcasters. This is the place where the rising tide raises all ships. So keep sailing. Until next time.